To know about the North Dakota Legislature is right here. The Legislature Today show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, you can always catch us online. Watch the show at GreatPlainsNews.com. GreatPlainsNews.com. And watch for the recap on a cable access station near you.
This is Dale Wetzel. This is the Legislature Today radio program. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in Bismarck, North Dakota. We're engaging in a bit of ballot nostalgia tonight. We just were speaking to Mr. Kent French, who was the leader of a historic referral campaign in 1989 that repealed the legislature's increases of sales and income and motor fuels taxes. This was in December 1989, and since then there has never been any legislature that has attempted to do anything that the 1989 legislature did that time in terms of raising taxes. And that's one of the reasons why, is because the legislature back then raised income, sales, and motor fuels taxes, and then it got its collective backside handed to it. And there was not been a significant tax increase since then. We have with us for the second half hour of our show, the last half hour, we have Mr. John Gosby. John Gosby is the Sioux County State's Attorney. He played a significant role in the 1989 referral campaign because one of the things that was on the special election ballot, there were a total of 8 measures, and one of them was to require North Dakotans to buckle their seatbelts before they set off in their cars and trucks. And it was also a primary enforcement law, which means that if the police saw you not wearing a seatbelt, they could pull you over and pull you over and ticket you without having a pretext for doing so other than just seeing you not wearing your seatbelt. John Gosby ran for state attorney general as a Republican in 1988. He lost to Nick Spaeth. He is also, as I mentioned, an occasional referral activist. He has also been involved in promoting term limits and referring seatbelt legislation. I've always called him, joshingly, Seatbelt John, because that is the issue that I think that he's best known for in his political career. Welcome, Mr. Gosby.
Buckle up, don't get caught breaking our governor's seatbelt law.
This is a little jingle that John liked to sing whenever he addressed this seatbelt issue. No, he hasn't lost his marbles. He's really quite an intelligent man. It's just that he breaks into song when he thinks about seatbelts, and we just kind of let him do that. One of the things that John is also a former staff lawyer for the Legislative Council, which is the legislature's research arm. He's a former bill drafter and attorney for the Legislative Council. One of the things we wanted to talk about this evening is the cost of the legislature, what it costs every day to taxpayers for the legislature to be in session. Legislators are paid an amount of money per day, and they also receive housing allowance. They receive health insurance coverage if they desire it at no cost to them, as do state employees. They also receive a monthly salary. And we're going to be kind of walking through how much legislators are paid and what their compensation arrangements are and what this means to the taxpayer, because you may not be aware of this, but when the legislature is in session, you read about the legislators getting paid $157 per day. That is the current statutory rate of pay for a rank-and-file legislator. The committee chairmen are paid more. The majority and minority leaders are paid still more. But the base rate of pay for legislators is $157 per day. And you might think, okay, 157 times 5 is their weekly rate. Well, you're coming up a little short there, because legislators are paid $157 a day, 7 days a week. Your legislator is getting paid at least $1,100 a week when the legislature is in session. And today is the 115th calendar day at which your legislator has been paid at least $157 per day. And we're going to have, I suspect, at least 2 more days of legislative meetings, if not more, if the governor has to call a special session for the legislature to finish its work. So when we're talking about how much it costs for the legislature to meet every day, it's between $45,000 and $50,000 per day. And this is not an insignificant expense. And John, I know that you've been the subject of legislative compensation has fascinated you for some time, and that's why I wanted to have you on to discuss it. Do you think that the legislators are paid too much?
Yes, I do. They seem to have the best union in the state. I'm not aware of any other union that gets 7 days pay for 5 days work. I guess they have some good organizers.
Well, they do indeed. To what extent do you think? Oh, okay. During the session, they get $1,100 a week. Shouldn't legislators be paid reasonably well for their work?
No, as a matter of fact, quite literally, I'm looking at a little table of what legislators get paid in other states, and we are by no means at the bottom. We're definitely not near the top. That's true. But in New Mexico, they get nothing. In Texas, they get $7,200 a year, and here in North Dakota, it works out to roughly $10,000 to $12,000 a year because they also get this $157 a day when they come to interim meetings, organizational sessions, and so on. And of course, they get the housing allowance and everything else on top of that.
Well, they also get a base salary.
That's right. Of something I forgot the figure.
It's $440 a month.
Okay.
Plus health care.
They raised all those this session. Surprise, surprise. And they also passed 2 resolutions to make the initiative and referendum more difficult. And
tell us about those, the resolutions to make initiative and referendum more difficult.
Well, there is one that a lot of us are calling the No State Fair resolution. That's House Resolution 3034. And under current law, you have to submit a petition, an initiated petition, 90 days ahead of the election. So if the November election's coming up, you have to get it filed by sometime in August, early August. They're going to raise that, if this thing is approved by the voters, to 120 days. And, of course, that conveniently puts the state fair out of the window. And apparently the justification is that the Secretary of State and the Supreme Court would need more time to fight over whether an initiated measure is proper. And to me, that's a irresponsible act on the part of the legislature. And interestingly, this particular measure, 3034, is going to be on the ballot in the primary election in 2014. That's the June election. And that's always the one with lower turnout, so maybe they're hoping a lower turnout will work to their advantage. And their other one that they passed, 3011, they're putting that in the general election. 3011 would basically strip from the voters the authority to initiate an appropriation measure.
A constitutional amendment, yes.
I thought it was any measure.
No, it just affects constitutional amendments that appropriate money. Basically, it says you may not even begin to circulate an initiated measure if it is a constitutional amendment that tells the legislature that they have to spend money on something.
Yes, I stand corrected. And to me, that's definitely against the spirit of Article 3. That's the article dealing with the initiative, referendum, and recall. And in Section 1, this has been brought up before on the show when Curly Hoagland mentioned this issue. It starts out saying, the people reserve to themselves the power of initiative, referendum, and recall. That means the people are the sovereign. The legislature works for the people, not the other way around. And unfortunately, I think it's becoming the pervasive attitude up there is that the people are here for the benefit of the legislature. Here we are at day 78. It looks like they're going to actually stretch into day 80, which is the absolute limit. And that will be a record, as I understand it. The previous record was 79. And, if they're being paid so much, why can't they get the job done? We had more money available this session than ever before, and they managed to spend all that to at least temporarily have a deficit. which they had to work through. So I think maybe less pay, they'll go home sooner. And we'd be a lot better off if they went home sooner. It's hardly an original thought with me. Way back in 1866, a New York judge said that no man's life, liberty, or property is safe when the legislature is in session. A little bit of historical trivia on that. That came out of a malpractice lawsuit against a lawyer who made a mistake for a client because he didn't look to see what the legislature had done, and the legislature had undone all that lawyer's hard work. So the lesson we all have to learn is that really, life, liberty, and property are not safe when the legislature is in session. And to me, these two resolutions, plus a couple others that fortunately did fail, show an active hostility to citizen involvement in the process.
What were some of the other proposals that did not pass that you thought were a bit questionable?
Well, there was one. That was House Resolution 3005. That was the one that required 4% of the population of at least half of the counties. So that would have led to, remember we talked about this before, we would have had an even wider petition as we had all the counties listed beside each name. We'd have to use, what do they call that, landscape printing, or else 8.5 by 14 paper to circulate the petitions. And I just wonder why the legislature is so afraid of the people. That was 3005. Fortunately, that died a quick death in the House. It never even made it over to the Senate. Another one was 4006, and that would have basically stripped the voters of the power, or made it more difficult for the voters to, it's a variation on the one that did pass in terms of the constitutional amendment for appropriation of funds, and that could not be circulated either. So I'm left with the question, what is the legislature afraid of? I mean, these are the very voters they come to be put into office, yet they want to put up these brick walls in obstruction of the voters' power. And to me, that's inconsistent.
What do you think are going to be the consequences at the polls, if any, for folks that advocate reining in initiative and referral rights for whatever reason they may have?
Well, I hope a few people lose their elections. The one that did pass had, let's see, the final version had 54 representatives in favor and 29 senators in favor. I hope maybe we can get the voters in those districts to pay attention to how their representatives and senator voted on this measure, and maybe a few of them will be finding another career opportunity besides serving in the legislature. The legislature shouldn't be a career. It should be a temporary position that one takes, and it shouldn't be a long-term employment. It should be very brief.
I'll take the devil's advocate position here on the one that's on the ballot in November of 2014. Let's just say, for sake of argument, that there shouldn't be the ability to use the initiated measure process to make budget decisions. What do you think about that? Because the argument that was presented was, okay, budget decisions should be left to the legislature because it's a group of folks that are briefed on the issues, and they can make compromises. They can take testimony. They can have all of this information that may not be available to the average voter, and that is what the whole small R Republican form of government is about. You elect people, and they make decisions on your behalf, and it doesn't make sense in that context to slap a budget measure on the ballot. It essentially would allow a special interest group to attempt to appropriate public funds for itself. And so therefore, why shouldn't that be something that should be very difficult to do or be frankly prohibited?
Well, first of all, where is it written that the legislature is a supreme God on this subject? As a matter of fact, our Constitution specifically says the legislature is not supreme because the people have reserved this power to themselves. So the legislature basically, although they don't do it officially, their policy with this would repeal that part of the state constitution that says the people are in charge. And that's a fundamental core change in the whole notion of citizen involvement in government that North Dakota and a lot of other states have. And I don't think that's a step in the right direction. As far as people being briefed on issues, that's why we'd have an election. That's why we have TV stations to run ads, and all sorts of talented public relations people can publish ads for and against any measure that comes up. But I'll get back to my fundamental question: what is the legislature afraid of? I don't claim to have a monopoly on wisdom myself. So why should they make a similar claim?
I was going to ask you as well, one of the things that you heard a lot during this session, and I've heard it before as well, is that there is a belief among some legislators that putting something on the ballot is easy. All you have to do is get a petition and go down to the shopping mall and spend a couple of weekends, and people will just come and fill your petitions up, and then you're done. I mean, you've actually been involved in a number of these things. How difficult is it to put something on the ballot?
It takes a lot of work as is appropriate. It should not be easy to do. It is a project. I think they overstate those people who present that argument are overstating how easy it is. From my own experience, if you're really good at circulating, on average, you can get maybe 6 to 10 signatures an hour. So if you're doing a constitutional amendment, and you're looking at a little more than 30,000 signatures, you want to have a safe margin, go up to 35. Do the arithmetic. That's, if I keeping the zeros right, that's 6,000 hours of circulator time. And that's an awful lot of work. It's appropriately an awful lot of work, but it's by no means an easy task. And so I guess I would challenge those legislators, come with me to the softball tournament.
I was going to...
Or the state fair.
Yeah. How closely do you follow the legislature anymore, John?
Not very much. It's bad for my health.
How is it bad for your health?
It infuriates me. It really does. I mean, it's just so frustrating watching what they do, and it's just easier not to pay attention that much.
At risk of putting your health into a parlous state, I wanted to discuss with you the legislature's efforts this year to enact a primary seatbelt law. It was something that you have been fond of for your time during your time in North Dakota. I mean, this is something that comes up almost every session. The idea that if you're driving a car or a truck and you're in the front seat, you should have your seatbelt fastened, for one thing. And also, if the police see you driving without your seatbelt fastened, they should be able to pull you over and give you a ticket, even if you have done nothing else wrong. What's wrong with that?
Well, fortunately, when that bill was introduced, the EMT guys were able to revive me, so I'm here to squawk about it.
Okay.
No, seriously. Earlier in this conversation, I said I don't have a monopoly on wisdom. Personally, I almost always use my seatbelt. I think it's a wise thing to do, but I am sick and tired of nanny government. And I know people will say, well, it costs health and it costs this for insurance, costs that for health insurance, and so on. People have to accept responsibility for their own life choices, from the trivial to the important. And it is a perfectly rational fear to be more afraid of being burned up or drowned than you are of being crippled. Now, personally, I think the odds are in my favor, and I'll take the chances on being burned or drowned. But who am I to tell you that you're wrong if you fear those more? Because, and if you accept this, where is the principled end? And way back in the 89 referral thing, I brought up the idea that, look, they will eventually regulate potato chips. And if you live in New York City, I'm not sure if they've quite gotten to potato chips, but they're definitely getting to the supersized sodas if you buy them in the wrong place. And there is no limit. And I challenge all of the people who support a bill like this to say, okay, I will go this far and no more. Will they ever do that? I doubt very much anybody will have the courage to rise to that challenge, because basically there's a feeling, or to put it another way, I think we have more to fear from those who would do us good than from those who do us harm, because those who want to do us good feel they've got righteousness on their side and can't take no for an answer. It's like the Boy Scout dragging the poor little old lady across the street before finding out, oh, she was on the side she wanted to be on. And I think the Boy Scout should be at least required to say, ma'am, are you on the side of the street you want to be, before he takes her across. And why can't we expect this out of the government?
What does one do about this instinct? This instinct you mentioned toward, you referred to it as nanny government. What does one do about it?
All we can do is fight and fight and fight and stand up and be counted. And hope that people who support these will start reflecting on where would they draw the line in their own life. Okay, probably most people who support the primary enforcement seatbelt law use their own seatbelts. But I'd be willing to bet almost all of them have some little sin in their life, some little thing that it's a little riskier than perhaps I'm willing to do, and that they want me to leave them alone. All I'm asking is to be left alone. I'll leave them alone. They leave me alone. I'm not asking to tell them what to do. I'm just asking them not to tell me what to do.
This reminds me of a story I heard, and it's a completely different issue, actually. It's an issue about whether you can purchase bottle rockets in North Dakota. This was 4 years ago. I was sitting in a hearing at which this ophthalmologist was arguing quite passionately that the sale of bottle rockets should be banned in North Dakota because they can cause eye injuries. If you shoot a bottle rocket at someone and hit them in the eye or it blows up in their face, it can cause them damage. And he referred to a patient of his who had this happen as a young man. And the bottle rocket hit his eye or blew up in his face. I don't remember the exact details of it. And the ophthalmologist said with a completely straight face, I mean, I almost gagged because I thought it was so funny and unintentionally ironic. He said, I really felt sorry for this young man because then he couldn't go and play extreme sports. He couldn't play hockey, and he couldn't sail through the air on his bike. And I thought, he couldn't kill himself some other way by having a bottle rocket blow up in his face instead of, if you're playing hockey, I imagine your penchant for sustaining injury would be quite high, but
I would think so. Well, you couldn't get me to climb one of those walls. What do they call those walls where they have all the
rock walls? The
rock walls for all the tea in China. But if you want to climb one of those, I'll be happy to sit down there at the bottom and watch you do it. And, I'll call your family if you fall. And who am I to say you're right or wrong? And that's the fundamental question. Where will these people draw a principled line? Where will they say enough is enough? If somebody can answer that question for me, maybe I'd say, okay, then we'll go this far. But they never give up.
The measure that refers to initiative petitions in November says that if you have something that's worth so much money, if you have a proposal that's worth so much money, you have to have it voted on in the November election. Do you have any particular quarrel with that?
No. As a matter of fact, I'd like to see it be a requirement for all of these things, and I think it's kind of sneaky of the legislature to choose to put, which one do they put on the primary?
The one about 120 days.
Yeah, the state fair one is in the primary election instead of the general election. If it were up to me, I'd do away with all these special elections for things like bond issues and so on, and make those come up at a general election, because that's always the one with the maximum turnout, get the maximum voter participation, and that's the role of the people, is to express their will in a circumstance like this. And
we've been speaking to John Gosby. He's the Sioux County State's Attorney, a former candidate for North Dakota Attorney General. This is Dale Wetzel. This has been the Legislature Today radio program, and thank you.
Calling all tractor lovers, the 12th annual K-Fire Radio